This is Learning to Dad
I'm a cool dad. That's my thing.
with Tyler Ross.
What I do have are a very particular set of skills.
I'm gonna have fun, and you're gonna have fun.
Oh, you're in Maryland? Really? You're only probably an hour from me. I'm in Warrenton, Virginia. Just
Oh wow.
yeah. So how close are we?
I think so. How close are you to Arlington or like Alexandria?
Probably 45 minutes or so.
Yeah, so maybe like an hour and a half.
Oh, cool. Cool. Well, that's great. Well, Jalisa Hardy, welcome to the podcast. Thank you for coming on. How's the day going?
It's been a great day. Very, very amazing day. So glad to be here with you.
Cool. It's my pleasure, for sure. So how do your days usually start? You wake up and go straight for the coffee machine, or what's your morning look like?
Surprisingly, I have a 4-year-old, a 3-year-old, and a 2-year-old, and I don't drink coffee.
Oh, wow. Me too. Man, and so I have an 8-year-old and 9-year-old. They're 12 months apart. So how far apart are all three of these kids? And what on earth are they doing right now?
If you don't hear them, I'm surprised. They're in the room with my mom. So my first two are 10 and a half months apart, and then my second two are 19 and a half months apart.
So you came home and said, doctor said, I'm good to go. That's wild. 10 and a half months, and then 19 months or so.
Mm-hmm.
It's amazing. Having those two tight, as far as I'm concerned, you're just exited the hardest part, or you're in the hardest part, and then it just gets more and more fun after that.
Yeah, I agree. It's definitely been a fun journey. Being a stay-at-home mom and being able to watch them grow up has been an amazing experience. Because kids are a reflection of us, and they're here to teach us. So just by being aware and present with that, I'm learning a whole lot about myself, and just being able to watch them grow is an amazing experience. So I love it.
Yeah, the folks that choose not to have kids, I suppose that's the best decision for them, or they think that it is. But those of us that have kids, it's like exposes you to a whole new dimension or depth of like the feelings you can feel. You're more scared, more loved, more happy, more sad. It's intense.
Definitely is an intense journey for sure.
Yeah, and so you're a single mom taking care of your kids. My folks got divorced when I was 6-7 years old and was with my mom mostly. So I have an affection and soft spot in my heart for moms that are working and moms that are doing it mostly on their own, if not completely on their own. So I appreciate you as a mom, stepping up and doing it all. But tell me about the work that you're doing. I'm looking at some things that I recognize, like holistic health practitioner. My mom is a holistic health practitioner, so I kind of have my head wrapped around that. But then we talk about spiritual alchemist, trauma of money certified professional, human design expert, and then of course I'm a self-published author also. I want to know what kind of book you wrote, and a licensed minister as well. So that again, no coffee.
No coffee. I get my adrenaline, I get my energy from life, and that's part of what you mentioned as far as human design. So there are different energy types in human design, and I'm the energy type that has the most energy and ability to work and sustain my energy for the long haul. So for me, my energy is natural, and I don't need coffee.
So is the human design, as a human design expert, and you talk about being that type, like are there multiple, categories that 100% of us fall into?
Yes, so there is 5 different energy types. There is the manifesting generator, which makes up 35% of the population. The generator, which makes up 35% of the population. The projector, which makes up 20% of the population. The manifestor, which makes up 8% of the population. And then the reflector, which makes up 1 to 2% of the population.
And which are you?
I'm the manifesting generator.
Okay, and that was at what percent?
35%.
35. Okay, so you've got a lot of people to relate to with respect to that. And how do you identify which one of these categories you fall into? Is it a test, or do you use your education and experience to identify it? Like, how do I figure out what I am?
Yes, so it's based off, you can go to my website, it's based off of your date of birth, your time of birth, and location of birth. So it has some similarities to astrology, some aspects of astrology, but again, it's based off of your date of birth, your time of birth, and location of birth. So it doesn't have, it's as unique as your fingerprint. So once you get your human design body graph or chart, it'll tell you your energy type.
And how do I take that information forward with me? Like, what do I do with that once I know what it is?
It's more so about awareness and embodying the information, because over the years and throughout life, we've picked up conditioning, we've picked up ideas for who we're supposed to be, how we're supposed to live, what we're supposed to do. And it's not really based off of what we truly desire, it's just based off of those things. So when you understand your human design, it gives you the permission to take off all of those things and just be the most authentic version of yourself and be more aware of those aspects of your personality that have always been there, but you just kind of cover them up with other things or how you were raised or by your experiences. So it's a tool for really self-discovery and self-awareness that gives you permission to live life the most authentic way.
That is the pursuit that all of us should be chasing, isn't it?
Absolutely.
And I just filled it out. I'm getting ready to view my chart here. So, okay, I'm a 40 generator. Okay, does that make sense? So I just did it. It identifies me as a generator.
Yes, you're a generator. And that's, like I said, generators and manifesting generators make up 70% of the population. So majority of the people that you come in contact with will be generators or manifesting generators. And they're very similar in certain ways, but different, because manifesting generators have a duality to their energy type, where it is a combination of the generators and the manifestors. Generators are more so the workers. So the ones that can work 8, 9, 10, 12 hours, sustain that energy, get things done, do things for the long haul. But it's important for generators like yourself to know that if something doesn't light you up, it's important not to do it. If it's not something that feels aligned or feels right in your body, then it's important to say no to it, because if not, it'll lead to burnout, it'll lead to gut health issues, it'll lead to a lot of different ailments and sicknesses, depression, those types of things that we normally wouldn't equate to what we're doing or how we're being. It would normally be something different that we would equate to that.
That totally resonates with me, because some things like fill me up and I'm ready to go, and then other things, just like 5 seconds of it, deplete me of all enthusiasm and joy and the rest. And I try to do as many of the positive things as possible, but sometimes you just got to grind down on stuff, right? Yeah. So and then so human design expert, talk to me about spiritual alchemy.
So that is a newer. So I recently rebranded as the Golden Child. So a little backstory about that. When my parents conceived me, they were preparing to get a divorce, and grown people, married people do things that lead to reproduction. So,
They sure do.
here I am. But maybe 4 to 5 months into her pregnancy with me, she had already had fertility challenges, had multiple miscarriages before me, hadn't been able to carry a child full term. And for her getting pregnant with me, with those circumstances in place, there was a lot of drama, there was a lot of challenges that came along with that. So 4 to 5 months into her pregnancy, they did the normal testing and different things like that, and it came up that I would have Down syndrome. And then later on down the line, they found that doing the sonograms and the ultrasounds, that I would be born without a stomach, and that my esophagus and my windpipe would be fused together. And one of the nurses that she had at the time, looking at the results, looking at the test, she said to my mom, she said, the best thing for you to do would be to get an abortion. She said, because your child has all of these different ailments, all of these different health challenges, and if you are to make it full term with your pregnancy, she's going to need multiple surgeries in order to have any type of quality of life. And for my mom, of course, she saw the test results. She heard what the doctor said. She heard what the nurse said, but she decided that God had the final say. So she went to a revival, had them pray over her, and she said the only thing that she remembers is feeling like she was being lifted off of her feet and that God was pouring gold into her stomach. And from there, when she went back to the doctor, they couldn't find anything wrong with me.
Wow, my whole body just standing up on end. Like every hair on my body, there's a lot of hair, and it's all standing up right now. Yeah.
So for me, that being healed in that way gave me the ability to empower people to know and understand that that's possible. That no matter what situation or circumstance you might see in the physical, there is a supernatural realm that can be manifested into the natural so that you can receive and have the life that you desire and that you deserve. So for me, the spiritual alchemy comes from showing people and empowering people to know that the physical realm isn't the only possibility.
So how long have you felt aligned with this purpose that you're on now? Like, were you a young child when you felt this connection to another dimension or another existence?
Yes, it's interesting that you asked that because tell the story. I was about maybe 11 or 12 when I had this fish. I had a fish. His name was Elmo. It was a beta fish, and he died. He was floating at the top of the tank. And my mom, I come home from school and she's like, "Yeah, well, we got to flush Elmo." I said, "He's not dead. He's sleeping." I touched the tank, and a few hours later, he was back swimming around the tank. And my mom is like,
Whoa.
I didn't know that fish was dead. But I just have had this gift of healing and just reviving things from a very young age, even before I even knew or understood what it was. Because for me, it was having that childlike faith. It was like, I see the fish floating. It's been like that for a couple of days. I saw that, but for me, it was just like, no.
That's so beautiful, and you touch on something so dear to me. Is that childlike, what was it? The purity or whatever it was. I don't remember the precise word you said, but my daughter being 9 is really into fairies. And she says, "Dad, do you see fairies? Mom, do you see fairies?" She goes out in the yard and builds these beautiful little communities intended for fairies. And she always asks me about this story of when I was 8 or 9 or 10 years old. Now, I remember seeing this entity looking at me. And I figured it out last night because she asked me about it last night. You know the little figure on the men's room sign that's just like a circle as a head and their arms are straight down?
Uh-huh.
It was exactly that shape. And the reflection you see in a bubble when you blow bubbles that looks kind of like a rainbow if you close your eyes real tight and then open them, like that moment of adjustment, it looks like a rainbow.
Yeah.
Like that entity was made out of that. And I'm so disconnected from that now, but I still have that vivid memory, and I want my daughter to maintain that and be open to it for as long as possible. So tell me about how you maintained your openness to that kind of realm, or just to not get sucked into the material world that we're in all the time.
It was definitely a lot of trial and error, and there was a lot of, like I mentioned, as a part of human design, a lot of the deconditioning and unlearning certain things about life and about who I am and how I'm designed to live. We're all limitless beings, but when we get so focused on the physical, we limit ourselves and we're limited by our environment. So for me, it's been a lot of deconditioning, a lot of unlearning things that I thought were truth when it came to having a religious background. Because, like I mentioned, I am a licensed minister. So I was born and raised in the church, grew up in the church with different ideologies, different dogmas, different beliefs that at some point I realized no longer served me. So as hard as it was, because that was a part of my identity, I had to release those things to realize that there was so much more to life that I could see, and some things that I couldn't see physically, but I knew were always there. So going back to like what you said about your daughter and wanting and desiring for her to not to always have this childlike faith or childlike innocence and desire for more, for me it was about releasing that conditioning and those beliefs that I held so dear and I thought were my identity that really weren't.
Did you have to do that on your own, or did you find like a mentor or someone to look up to that kind of helped you decondition?
Yeah, definitely. I've had mentors throughout the years, but more so with human design. More recently, I did have a mentor that really worked with like educating me, and that was who I got my certification through with human design to help me with that process.
So the type of people that you're working with as it relates to this, what we're talking about, do you find that it's already people that are kind of open-minded to this or had an experience as a kid that made them that way? Or do you feel like it's people completely soaked into whatever dimension this is and you're just kind of introducing the concept to them?
I think it's a mixture of people. Human design is not new, but it's fairly new to being widely known. So when I share this information with people about human design and just the supernatural, it's like they have this inner knowing that it was something more, but because they've been conditioned to believe that things had to be a certain way, sometimes it can be harder for people to understand and grasp. But once they get like the snippets or the downloads or the gems from it, it's like they can't get enough of it, because it's like they feel like I've always known there was more to life, and this helps me to really see and understand that.
Have you ever had to explore like something to engage in that at a deeper level, whether it be like psilocybin or ayahuasca? The word you used, download, was so cool because my mom did an ayahuasca and she had like an atypical experience, but she didn't purge. She didn't like have the trip down where she was, but she came back and a week later she said she had like this download of happiness. I was like, that's amazing. So like, have you ever had to go outside yourself to try that, or has it always been kind of accessible for you?
I haven't, and actually the fact that you brought that up is I know it's not a coincidence, because this is something that somebody actually asked me last week in a connect call that I had. They're over in Nigeria and they do work with psilocybin and ayahuasca, those types of things, and they were telling me about it. And I actually read Jada Pinkett Smith's book, and that was her awakening experience with ayahuasca. So it's something that I am becoming more open to as I continue to hear about it, but it's not something that I've experienced on my own just yet.
Yeah, the way that I've thought about it was almost like hopping on the express lane where the sun pass is going to hit you for a couple dollars versus just taking the long way. It felt like rather than kicking in the door to this whole new world, it kind of peeks you in the window and then sets new goals for you. But like, so you've got a really interesting like life's perspective. Like, how do you apply that to parenting?
So human design has actually helped me to not only become a better mom, but understand my kids on such a deeper level. To understand, like, for example, so the manifestors, they're not self-esteem, or just when you know that they're not feeling like themselves, is anger. And normally that's a negative label or something negative that you would see in your child, and you would want to kind of discipline that out of them, like you can't be angry or it's not good to be angry. But for me, understanding that, I'm able to have compassion and able to embrace her in times when that anger could have deterred me had I not known. So for me, it has shifted the way that I've parented. It has shifted the way that I've seen my children and been able to understand them on a level that I've never would have imagined. Because I've done early childhood education, I've done, the parenting classes, those types of things. But human design has opened up my vision and the way that I see myself and my children in a way that I probably would never have had that not been the case. And I'm so much more understanding, so much more peaceful, passionate, and calm when it comes to my children and how I help them learn to grow through life versus just trying to. A lot of our conditioning came from our parents. So for me, it was not trying to condition them to be how I wanted them to be, but helping to nourish them so that they can flourish in their unique identity.
I want to ask you about imagination. The word, I want to dissect that a little bit. Like, my daughter asks me about fairies, and then to engage, like, I'm not on that level. I'm not a 9-year-old. I'm not as pure. I've been disrupted by this world and allowed it to impact me, and so I don't connect with her on that level. So I have to use my imagination to relate, and like, it almost feels like pretending, where for her it's extremely real. Like, she wouldn't be dedicating all this mind space and heart to it if it wasn't 100% real to her. So, like, you sound like you could relate on their level so much more than I am now. I want to cultivate that in myself to connect really. But talk to me about the difference between your connection and the way I describe mine with imagination.
So for me, a lot of the work has been connecting with my inner child. A lot of times we've had experiences or traumatic events that have happened in our life that caused us to disconnect from that part of ourselves, because it's like, okay, I have to work, I have these responsibilities, I have these things that I need to do. I don't have time to really see things deeper than what I can see in the physical. So for me, it's been reconnecting with my inner child and realizing that we all have that part of ourselves, but it's been covered up or just conditioned to not even pay attention to that part of ourselves, because we do have responsibilities, we have things that we need to do. But for you and for me, it's about practicing that so that it becomes easier as time goes on versus just saying, oh, it's not working, I'm going to give up on this. So you're doing the work. It's just going to take some time for you to get back to that place to understand and see things in a way that the seemingly impossible is actually possible. Because anything that we dream or desire, even for her to see fairies, it's like that's real. That's her reality.
So do you have any suggestions or tips or advice for somebody that is looking to access or unlock that inner child? Like, what can I do to work on myself to make that more free-flowing when I'm with my kids, or shit, when I'm at work or with my dog or whatever?
So one of the questions I ask myself often is, how can I make this task fun and easy? So if you think in that way, your subconscious will start to give you ideas and answers for how to see the fun and ease in what you're doing, versus it being so it has to be perfect or it has to be this way. Like, we have these ideas for, especially at work, okay, I have these tasks that I need to do, it has to be done this way. But when you look from that lens of how can I make this task fun and easy, it gets you back into that childlike state to say, this is play. Like, really, it's really play. And although we are adults, we still get to play. We still get to play and make things enjoyable and make things fun. So that's one of the things. The other thing that I do a lot of meditation. And I don't know if you've ever heard of emotional freedom technique or tapping. No. And that is something that I consider to be acupressure with affirmation. And you tap on different points of your body that release and sometimes help you embrace different emotions. And more recently, I did a series of tapping meditations around inner child healing. And it helped me to connect with her on such a deeper level, to be able to see her and sit with her and embrace her and give her the time and attention that she may have missed growing up. So when you take that time to do that, it opens up so many new doors for imagination, for play, and just enjoying life on a different level. So those are two things.
And is that something that a lot of your work is centered around, helping people do that?
Yeah, because it's all about, for me, it's about, my purpose work is really about helping people to see and be their most authentic selves. And in our authenticity, we get to enjoy life. We get to play. We get to embrace the fun and ease of life versus settling or deciding that everything has to be hard. We have to grind and hustle to get where we need to go and get the things that we need to. And that's just part of the conditioning and the deconditioning process, to understand that there's a fun and easier way to live life.
Were you doing this type of work prior to having your kids?
Nope.
So what were you doing until then?
So before my kids, I was a teacher. I taught early childhood. I normally 0 to 2 years old. After the 2-year-old age, I was, there was a lot there for me. So I stuck with mostly infants and toddlers, and just being able to embrace, like, that's a good, maybe I was doing this work before.
Yeah, it's starting to sound a lot like it.
Because even the centers that I was working for, we focused on learning through play and helping them to understand and know that even when you're playing, you're learning. And that may have been the start of what I'm doing now, to help people embrace their inner child and embrace the joy, the peace, and the fun that life can be when we do that. So maybe it did start there. Now that I'm thinking about it, because kids have this innate ability to incorporate you into their play and their imagination and their world, and it's like they're so innocent, you can't refuse it. It's like I saw a meme. It says, if a child hands you a pretend phone, you take it and you talk on the phone.
Yeah, I love that.
It's like with kids, but when we can embrace that and really think of it in a new way, to just play and enjoy and be present, it makes a huge difference for them and for us. Because the present moment is all we have.
It sounds so much like you're right in your wheelhouse time right now, like you are preparing for it as a teacher, and then you've engaged in it as a profession with young kids. Are you nervous about the kids getting older outside your kind of scope of experience and dealing with 0 to 2-year-olds, and now having a 4-year-old that's going to be 16 and right after you blink a couple times? Like, are you nervous about engaging with kids outside that level you're so accustomed to?
I am. So I have my moments. I will say I have my moments when I realize, like, how did my baby become a talking, walking 4-year-old, almost 5-year-old? Like, where did that time go? But for me, with the work that I'm doing and just the way that I've chosen to parent and be parented, as I'm learning how to be a mom, I have this trust and faith that being able to help them embody their true selves, whatever they face, whatever happens with our lives, their lives, they're going to have the resilience, they're going to have the joy, the peace, and everything that they need in order to handle those situations in the best way possible. I've gone through so many different experiences in life that have made me who I am today and a better version of myself because I've looked at those situations as lessons and blessings. So I know that that's something that I'm going to be able to pass down to my children. So I have this confidence and just this faith and trust that, you know, as they get older, yes, every child has their challenges, but we'll overcome them together.
Would you talk about the support system that you have around you as you develop this business and raise these kids? Like, there have to be people in your life that hold you up, and when you're down, lift you up, and when you're up, celebrate with you, and just from a practical matter, watch your kids every now and again.
Exactly, because if my mom wasn't here, my kids would be in here running and screaming. Saying like, "Oh, mama's on the phone, let's be loud." So yes, I have an amazing support system, and I mentioned earlier that, you mentioned earlier that I'm a self-published author, and a part of one of my books, the title of it is "It's All in Me: My Journey to Freedom and Living Abundantly," and in that book, I have a freedom framework, and the second part of that framework is friends and family, because my support system has been vital in every stage and phase of my life, because we're not designed to do life alone. We're not designed to live life in silos. We make life so much harder just trying to deal with things and manage things on our own. Yes, I am a single mom, but I say that it takes a village to be a mom. Just like it takes a village to raise kids, I have a village of people around me that help and support me and encourage me and pour into me when I feel like giving up or when I feel like things are becoming too much. Without my support system, I don't know where I would be.
Would you mind sharing the story of your kid's father?
Yeah, we could talk about that. So actually, the same year that I self-published my first book, the book that I just mentioned, I didn't realize just how much I would need that going through my marriage with their father. So we were college sweethearts. We met in college, and we were friends for years. We had built a relationship with each other's families. We built a bond. And prior to him, I was in an abusive relationship for 6 years off and on. And growing up the way that I grew up, I was used to dysfunction. I was used to, having those experiences and still being able to function as if life was regular. So excelling in school, being leaders in organizations, doing all of those things, it was like I've always had this ability to live a dual life, where I had these traumatic experiences, but in the other parts of my life, I was able to excel and show up as if nothing was going on in the other part of my life. So for me, getting into a relationship with him, I saw the red flags. I saw the signs, but for me, it's like, that's just the roller coaster of life. Let's see, let's see what's going to happen. And it was like parts of it were, I said quote unquote, as bad as my previous abusive relationships. But as I started to learn and see the signs, I believe that my children are what got me out of that. To not just settle for the dysfunction, not just settle for the chaos, because it started to impact my children. So we were married. So I self-published my book February of 2018. We got married August of 2018. Just 2 weeks before we got married, I had this realization that it wasn't what we were supposed to be doing. And I created this argument for us to kind of go our separate ways. And we were arguing, and he's like, all right, well, I'm packing my stuff. And I'm like, okay, I'll help you. I'm packing this stuff. I'm going down this long strip of sidewalk towards the cars, and I feel him hit me on the top of my head, and I fall to the ground, and he grabs me. And I'm like screaming for someone to come and help me, because my ex-husband, he's a bigger guy. 5'9", weighing over 400 pounds, and I'm like, I don't know what you're about to do. But he had never physically put his hands on me before, so this was something new. I had saw signs of his anger and his irrational emotions when it came to things that when he didn't get his way, but it was like, okay, I can handle that. But this instance, it was like, I felt like my life sort of flashed before my eyes because I didn't know what he was going to do next. And after that incident, he basically told everybody that he didn't hit me, that he just grabbed the top of my head, and because I had on a silky bonnet, his hand just slipped. And in my mind, I knew what happened, but the more that he told that story and the more the fear settled in, I started to believe it myself. Mm-hmm. And we talked to my pastor at the time, and he basically told me he didn't think it was a good idea for us to get married. But for me, I was more afraid of what he would do if I still decided that I didn't want to get married. So I walked down the aisle. And even if you see the wedding pictures, you'll see that there was a discontent on my face. Mm-hmm. There was a fear, but I hid it with a smile. And that's what I did for a very long time. Because people had no clue. People had no idea until I started talking about what was going on behind closed doors, that this man of God in the church doing all these different things could be such a monster at home. And the thing that really set it off for me to really decide to get out, because again, if it was just me having to deal with the abuse, I probably would have just been okay. But there were incidents where our oldest is actually named after him. And when he couldn't get to me, or when I became so numb to the abuse, he used him as a scapegoat. Mm-hmm. So there were incidents where he would do certain things to him and call it discipline or call it an accident. And I started to see how that was impacting our child. And a lot of the incidents, most of the incidents I didn't see with my own eyes. So what he told me is what all I could do was believe what he was saying. But there was an incident in May of 2021. I was 1 month postpartum with our third child. And I'm coming out of the bathroom because I'm about to get the kids ready to go outside. And I hear my son, my oldest son, Tony, he's screaming. And as a mom, as a parent, if you pay attention, you know the difference between your child's cries. And I knew this was something different. Something was happening. And I open the door, I look across, and I see that my baby is being squished in between the door and the wall by his father, who's pushing the door on him. And I'm like, what are you doing? And he starts to like get livid and just start yelling and cursing. And I'm like, this is it. This is it. Like, I'm not going to continue to just overlook these incidents when I've now seen it with my own eyes, and you're trying to use your rage and anger to convince me that that's not what I saw. So for me, it was like, I can no longer just accept the abuse because it's not just me now. It's not just me, and I'm seeing that even after that incident, when my son had this very emotional fit of rage where he was just crying and screaming and kicking on the floor, and I'm like, nobody could calm him down. Normally my mom is his like security blanket. She can calm him down. She can help him to co-regulate with her. But this incident, there was nothing. It was over an hour where my 2-year-old at the time was kicking and screaming and just yelling and thrashing because of what he had experienced. And I realized then it was like, I can't just allow this to keep happening. And I went that same day to get a protection order against my now ex-husband. And we've been separated and now divorced ever since.
Is there anything anyone in your life could have said to make that happen sooner?
No, because I was so used to dysfunction and trauma and living through it and still being able to perform, for lack of better words, out in the real world, in ministry, in business, and work. I thought I was okay.
Do you have anyone that might be in a circumstance like the one that you managed to rise above and remove yourself from? Is there anything you would say to them as advice or a practice they should take up, or something to bring them to that truth of, I'm fooling myself here?
Yeah. Um, Therapy was a huge part of what helped me to realize that I was so used to functioning in dysfunction. That helped me to realize the level of abuse that I was experiencing and still being able to live a life that people really didn't even know what was happening. Like when I started to tell the story, it was like people who were almost calling me a liar because they didn't believe that this person that they knew or this person that they saw could do the things that I was experiencing. So there was such a level of separation with that part of my life and the reality of what was happening. It was like almost for me, if I didn't experience it, and even my mom, who we've lived with, she's like, if you didn't tell me what was happening, I would not have known. Because he put on such a facade and such a mask for people to see a certain side of him. But for me, the closest person to him, I was the one to get the whole story. So I don't think there was anything that anyone could have said to make me believe that, I needed to get out sooner. But for those that may be experiencing something similar, or even the same situation where this person that you almost have this cognitive dissonance is what they called it as I started to research it, where you experience this person with so much love and so much care in those positive moments in your relationship that it almost overshadows the abuse and the negative parts of it. So you start to disassociate the negative parts of the relationship and only focus on the love and the care and the fun and the joy that you experience in that relationship. So if you don't have a support system, if you don't have a therapist and you're going through something like this, it's important, very, very important and vital to seek that out any way possible. Because if I was doing it alone and I didn't have that help and support, I probably would have still been there.
Was it still scary to do even with all the support?
Absolutely. I was a stay-at-home mom. I wasn't actively building an income. I was focused on my family. I was focused on the kids. My kids were very young, 2, 1, and 1 month old. I didn't have any income. I had no clue how things were going to work out. That was one of my biggest fears. Like, how am I going to provide for myself and my children without him?
What do you tell somebody thinking that now? Like, he pays the bills, he buys the groceries, he pays the rent, pays the mortgage. How do I leave this?
You'll be surprised at how provided for, how abundant your life can be when you release that toxic situation that you might feel more, I won't say comfortable because it wasn't comfortable, but you might feel that you have enough, especially financially. It's like, I don't know what's going to be on the other side, but you'll be surprised at how provision shows up, how people show up when you decide that you're no longer going to settle, or you're no longer going to just accept this situation based off of finances and fear.
How long did it take you to realize that removing yourself and your kids from that world was worth it?
It was almost immediately when I was able to get the protection order and I was able to see that there was another option, that I didn't have to stay there, that I didn't have to just accept the abuse and the misuse. It was like a weight was lifted when I finally made a decision to get out. Because that's where we get stuck, in the indecision. Like, what is it going to look like? How am I going to do this? But when I made that decision, as I was on my way to the police station to get the protection order, it was like a whole new world opened up. My eyes were able to see that even though the unknown can be scary, that I was going to be better off, that my children would be better off.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I hope people would need to hear it. I gotta believe there's so many people that can relate to that, and I'm so happy for you and your family to not be exposed to that anymore. And I mean, you just seem like a beam of positivity and light. It's hard to imagine anyone trying to snuff that out. As we're at 45, I feel like you and I could talk for hours, and maybe we do this again sometime. But I'd love to ask you a couple of kind of short answer, rapid fire questions, like a hard transition from the conversation we were just having. But if you think, I mean, you're in such a unique position, but as a single mom, like, what do you think are 2 or 3 of the characteristics that a single mom has to have to thrive and be a great parent, great worker, great example for their kids?
Definitely self-care and selflessness. I put those together because you can't pour from an empty cup. If you don't take care of yourself, it's going to be very hard and difficult to show up for your children the way that they need you to. The other thing is definitely patience with yourself and with your kids, because you all are learning together. And you're not going to know everything. You're not going to get everything right. And as kids, they're always going to be doing something that you probably won't like. So just patience as they learn and as you learn and grow together. So those are the 2 main things: self-awareness and just that self-care, and patience with the process and the journey of motherhood.
As a single mom, how I find in, like, I'm thinking about my own kids, like if they didn't have their mom and me at the same time, like if it was just me raising my kids or just my wife, the kids would be totally different. I find that my masculinity and her femininity, which were both kind of on the, not extremes, but on the outsides of those definitions, kind of balance out. How do you find balance between like the masculine and the feminine when it comes to raising your kids as a single mom who is, as far as I can tell, very feminine?
It's something that I am learning to, I realized that any void that they might experience from their father not being very active in their lives is being fulfilled by God. There are things that I can't do that he can, and by me releasing this idea that I have to do both or have to be both for them, it helps me to just stay in my lane and stay in my role and purpose for them. And then being open to other people coming into their lives to have that balance of the feminine and the masculine, and being open to it not being their father. Because for so long I held on to this, trying to manufacture that relationship with their father for them, because I thought that they would be missing out on that. But for me now, just embracing that my role as their mom is enough for them and that God will do the rest helps me to not feel like I have to be all the things to them all the time.
Is there a fictional parent, a fictional dad, fictional mom, television show, movie that you always kind of resonated with or always enjoyed, like watching on TV as a kid?
Honestly, I've never been a big like TV watcher. And my boyfriend now, he's like, he'll name movies or show me certain things. I'm like, I've never seen that. He's like, what? But I can't say a fictional one. But my mom, who was a married single mom, was the definition of what I desired to be as a mom because she was there even when my father wasn't. And it was also how I learned not to try to be all the things for my children. So for me, having that experience of watching my mom pour out everything for everybody all the time, I saw those things and I decided that I wanted to do things differently.
When in your life do you feel the most love?
When I'm with my loved ones and when I get time to myself. And those yeah, I love, like, there's I get filled up by being around my loved ones, but I also, it's very important as a part of my human design to have that time to myself. So I'm fueled and filled up by both.
I'm going to ask you one more question, but first I'm going to ask you to plug yourself, and I'm going to plug the gal that lent me this piece of art. It's a local artist. I try to do different local artists' work behind me. It's available for sale. You go to her website, carriemolina.com. If you're watching, here's the website. Where can people find you, Jalisa? Your website, social media, etc.?
Yes, I'm mainly on LinkedIn and Instagram. You can search Jalisa Hardy on LinkedIn, and then on Instagram, my tag is Jalisa the Golden Child. My website is jalisahardy.com. You'll find any support services, products that I have to offer. I have a 30-day Calm Life Planner that I recently released. That's on Amazon. And it's really to support you with going from a state of chaos to calm in your mind and in your life, and really help you to see things more clearly when it comes to making your decisions and have a better understanding of your human design. So, yeah, I do human design readings. I have a group called She's Ready Society for first generation mompreneurs that desire to build wealth with ease. Yeah, so you can find me JalisaHardy.com, Instagram, LinkedIn.
Great. We'll try to link all that stuff in the show notes. Okay, final question. This recording, I hope, lasts for a really long time, and I hope your kids get to listen to it when they're your age and have their own kids, and maybe their kids and their kids, so generations of your family to come. A message that you would share with every future Hardy, every future generation. What's something you'd share with them?
That's a good question. I don't think I've ever been asked that before. I think something that I wanted to hear and something that I desire to pass on would be that you are enough, just as you are. No matter what happens to you, no matter what someone says, when you can decide that you are enough and walk in that, then life can become so much more easy because you're not trying to please everyone. You're just simply choosing to just be all of you.
I love that. Thank you, Jalisa.